My name is Natalie Pierce, and I was 35 the night I realized the life I thought I had built with Logan might have been a beautifully constructed illusion. I had gone downtown to meet a friend for a drink at this upscale bar near Logan's office, the kind of place with soft amber lighting, polished wood, and a subtle jazz track humming through the speakers. Comfortable, safe, familiar. I thought it would be just a quick escape from the stress of work, a moment to laugh over a cocktail, and maybe forget for an hour how exhausting life had become. Logan had been distant lately. Late nights at client dinners, constant text messages about meetings, the occasional sigh when I asked how he was. Nothing overtly suspicious, just a little off. I'd brushed it aside. I wanted to trust him. I loved him. We'd been together 7 years. Almost a decade of shared apartments, shared Netflix accounts, shared dreams of a future that had, until now, felt bulletproof. I slipped into a bar stool at the counter, ordered a beer, and scrolled through my phone while waiting for my friend. That's when I saw him. Logan, walking through the door. And with him, another woman. Not a colleague, not someone I'd met before. A woman in a navy dress, laughing in a way that made Logan's head tilt just slightly, that half smile he reserved for moments I had assumed were private between us. They went straight to a corner booth. I froze. My stomach dropped. The way they leaned toward each other, the brush of hands on the table, it wasn't professional. It wasn't casual. It was intimate. My heart hammered, and I couldn't look away. I watched for 5, maybe 10 minutes, my pulse loud in my ears, every nerve alert. Logan laughed at something she said, leaning close, and she touched his hand like it was an instinct. My hands went cold. I did something impulsive, something I hadn't considered until the exact moment my mind screamed at me. I pulled out my phone, switched off the flash, and snapped a photo, a clear shot, hands touching. Logan's wedding ring, our ring, glinting faintly in the bar light. I sent it to him immediately. Interesting meeting you're having. I didn't wait for a response. I couldn't. My hands shook, my thoughts collided. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to vomit. I sat there pretending to sip my beer, but I couldn't taste it. The phone buzzed almost instantly. Natalie, what? Short, confused. The pause that followed was worse than any words could have been. My stomach churned. Did he deny it? Did he explain? I didn't want an explanation. I wanted reality. I wanted truth. When Logan's eyes met mine across the bar, the woman with him glanced up, startled, and I could see panic ripple through Logan like a shadow passing over water. It was the first moment I realized this wasn't just some harmless indiscretion. This was deliberate. This was months of hidden nights, quiet lies, and stolen moments I had never been invited to. I left the bar without saying a word, leaving cash on the counter. My car ride home was a blur. Streetlights smeared into long streaks of orange and white as my hands gripped the wheel too tightly. I wanted to call him, scream, demand answers, but the rational part of me, the part that still remembered the years, the love, the shared life, held back. When I walked into our apartment, it smelled like home. Familiar, safe, a cruel reminder of what had been shattered. Logan was there, looking slightly disheveled, that half smile on his face that I used to find comforting. Hey, he said casually. I stood in the doorway, phone in hand. The photo still glowed on the screen. Explain. He froze, like the question had knocked the wind out of him. And then, finally, the confession. 3 months. 3 months of late dinners, secret texts, hidden messages, stolen mornings that weren't mine. My vision blurred, anger, disbelief, sorrow, all swirling together. I didn't cry, not yet. I didn't scream. I felt cold, calculating. I moved him to the guest room, changed the smart home codes, asserted control over the space I had thought we shared equally. Sitting alone later, I stared at the ceiling, every memory flashing. Our first apartment, the way he used to brush my hair behind my ear, the promises whispered in dimly lit hotel rooms, the laughter and comfort that had once felt indestructible. It was gone, poisoned. And yet in the quiet, I began planning. Not revenge, not yet, but strategy. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was a war over 7 years of my life. I pulled out my laptop, opened accounts, began documenting every detail. Dates, purchases, social media interactions, anything that hinted at the depth and duration of the betrayal. I had no idea what I'd do with it yet, but I knew one thing: I wouldn't be blindsided again. Not by him, not by her, not by anyone. The night stretched on, and for the first time, I truly understood the weight of betrayal. And the first flicker of resolve sparked. I would not let this destroy me. I woke up the next morning with a pit in my stomach that hadn't gone away. The apartment was quiet, too quiet, as if the walls themselves knew what had happened and were holding their breath. Logan was already awake, moving around the kitchen like nothing had changed. The smell of coffee, the soft hum of the refrigerator, even the sunlight filtering through our blinds, it all felt wrong, foreign. I didn't say a word. I didn't pour a cup of coffee. I stood in the doorway, phone in hand, the photo from the bar still glowing like an accusation. "Natalie," Logan said carefully, his voice attempting calm, "we need to talk." I shook my head. "No, you need to explain, now." He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "It's not what it looks like." I laughed, bitter, hollow, shaking with rage. "Not what it looks like? Logan, I saw you, holding hands, laughing like she was the only person in the world that mattered to you. You've been sneaking around for 3 months, and it's not what it looks like?" He hesitated, eyes darting, lips pressed tight. It was nothing serious, just a connection I needed. It doesn't change what we have." I stepped closer, phone raised, shaking. "Nothing serious? 3 months of lies, dinners, texts, stolen mornings? And you call that nothing serious? Get out. Guest room. Now." Logan's face fell, his calm facade cracking. "Natalie, please, Now!" My voice left no room for negotiation. He moved slowly, almost ceremoniously, to the guest room, his shoulders slumped like a man realizing the consequences of his actions. I changed the smart home codes, locking the bedroom, asserting a physical boundary to match the emotional one I'd drawn. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I tried to make sense of it all. Memories I had cherished, our vacations, the nights we stayed up talking, his whispered reassurances, flashed across my mind and collided with the reality of the betrayal. The room felt smaller somehow, suffocating. I felt like I had been living next to a stranger for months, and only now had realized it. I pulled out my laptop and began documenting. Receipts from restaurants I'd never been to, small charges at boutiques, hotel stays he claimed were business trips. Everything he thought I wouldn't notice, every pattern that had escaped me while I trusted him blindly, it was all here. The anger that had been simmering since the bar incident boiled into cold, precise determination. I wouldn't let this slide. Not just because of pride or revenge, but because 7 years of my life deserved acknowledgement, deserved defense. Hours later, Logan came out, trying again to explain, to soften the truth. "Natalie, I know I messed up, but we can fix this. Therapy, counseling, anything. I love you. I cut him off. "Love doesn't erase betrayal. Not 3 months of it. Not the deliberate choices you made every day while I trusted you." He flinched. I could see the panic rising behind his calm facade. I almost felt pity for him, and then remembered the nights, the laughter, the hand-holding, the lies. Pity vanished like smoke. "You'll stay in the guest room," I said finally. "You'll have your space. You'll have your privacy, but you'll respect the boundaries I'm setting. And if I find anything else, anything, there will be consequences." He nodded slowly, the weight of his actions finally settling on his shoulders. He wasn't entirely remorseful, not yet, but I didn't need that. I needed control. I needed space. I needed to breathe without the constant reminder that the person I trusted most had been dismantling the foundation of our life for months. As I closed the bedroom door behind me, I sank onto the bed, phone and laptop beside me. My hands shook, but my mind had a sharp clarity now. This wasn't just heartbreak. It was a strategy, a plan, evidence to collect, boundaries to enforce, steps to take. The betrayal had ignited a focus in me I hadn't realized existed, a resilience born of shock and anger. In the quiet of our apartment, the home I thought I shared, I finally understood something crucial. This was no longer just about Logan or Olivia. It was about me. About reclaiming what was mine, protecting myself, and preparing for the inevitable legal battle ahead. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the anger settle into resolve. The war had only just begun. The day I hired an attorney felt surreal. Sitting in her crisp office, surrounded by leather chairs and the faint scent of polished wood, I realized this was no longer just a personal betrayal. This was a war over 7 years of my life, my home, my finances, and my sense of trust. Her name was Caroline Price, sharp, incisive, and unflinching. She didn't mince words. Natalie, you caught him cheating. You have proof. That's good. But in a no-fault divorce state, this doesn't automatically change asset division. The house, savings, retirement accounts, they're all marital property. Expect to split them roughly 50-50. I blinked. My stomach dropped. 50%? After 3 months of betrayal? 3 months of lies, hand-holding, secret dinners, stolen mornings, and false reassurances, and the law said it didn't matter. Caroline continued. Best case, we might argue for a slightly favorable split if we can prove marital waste, expenses he accrued on the affair. But don't expect much. And alimony? You both work. She earns a decent salary, probably none for either side. The room tilted slightly. My anger, grief, and disbelief churned. Legally, he gets off easy. Emotionally, I don't. Back home, Logan acted normal. Too normal. Breakfast cooking, casual conversation, like nothing had happened. The audacity of it was suffocating. I thought we could talk over breakfast, he said lightly, placing eggs on my plate. I didn't touch it. It's over, I said firmly, eyes locked on his. He froze. Completely? Yes, blocked him. Blocked all communication. Guest room is your space. He flinched, but said nothing. Instead, he retreated, almost obediently, as if my calm authority struck harder than any shouting could. Over the next few weeks, Caroline guided me through the steps, freezing joint bank accounts, tracking expenditures, cataloging every suspicious charge, every social media message, every receipt that hinted at Logan's ongoing betrayal. She stressed that Logan was flaunting the affair deliberately, bringing Olivia to the apartment when he knew it would hurt me. Every coffee cup, every watch, every subtle sign of intrusion became ammunition. I felt a cold clarity take over. This was no longer about heartbreak. This was about strategy, documentation, evidence, control. The emotional chaos that had threatened to swallow me now sharpened into meticulous attention to detail. The first temporary orders were sobering. Equal access to the home, frozen accounts, and continued residence by both parties. In a cruel twist, Logan had free reign of the apartment he had violated for months, while I fought to protect my own boundaries. He was brazen, smiling when I passed him in the hallway, while I carefully noted every interaction. Every night, I updated logs on my laptop, photos of Olivia's belongings, timestamps of visits, screenshots of messages. Each entry was a reminder of betrayal, yes, but also a tool, a shield, and a silent promise that I would not be undermined again. I realized something essential. Logan thought he had the upper hand. He thought flaunting the affair would destabilize me. But every deliberate act of cruelty only strengthened my resolve. I was no longer just the hurt partner. I was a woman reclaiming her life, and every detail mattered. By the time the first hearing rolled around, I felt ready. The evidence was organized, the strategy clear. I had learned a vital truth. The law may not punish betrayal, but preparation and meticulous attention to detail could protect what was mine and, if necessary, expose the deliberate cruelty of his actions. The war had escalated from the quiet devastation of betrayal to the clinical precision of legal battle, and I was determined. Logan and Olivia might flaunt their audacity, but I had something far more powerful: proof, resolve, and the unshakable clarity of someone who refuses to be blindsided. Again. The morning of the trial, I woke up with a knot in my stomach that refused to loosen. After months of planning, documenting, and steeling myself, it had come down to this. 3 hours in a courtroom, 7 years of my life reduced to a series of financial statements, affidavits, and carefully curated evidence. Logan arrived first with that same smug ease he always carried. But this time, he wasn't alone. Olivia followed behind, her presence a silent taunt. Bold, unapologetic, seated in the gallery as if she belonged. Every instinct in me screamed, "Stay calm, stay focused." Caroline leaned toward me. "Stay steady. Evidence, timeline, documentation. That's all you need. Let the facts speak." The proceedings were starkly unlike the melodrama of television. The judge, a woman who seemed more bored than anything, barely looked up from her notes as the lawyers exchanged papers. Numbers, Dates and receipts flew across the table. My heart pounded as Caroline presented the timeline, the bar photo, the social media admissions, the hotel receipts, and the documented visits to our apartment, each piece a stitch in the tapestry of Logan's betrayal. Logan's lawyer leaned forward, citing no-fault statutes. Your Honor, marital assets are to be divided equitably. While my client's behavior may be morally questionable, it does not affect the legal division of property. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Caroline countered expertly, highlighting deliberate cruelty and misuse of marital funds, emphasizing the evidence of ongoing infidelity. The judge nodded, noting the arguments but maintaining neutrality. Morality mattered little, law mattered most. Then came the specific assets. The house, purchased 3 years into the marriage, still carrying a hefty mortgage, was central. Retirement accounts, savings, and sentimental items were all up for discussion. Caroline argued my case, documentation of the affair's financial footprint, evidence of personal items, and careful accounting of pre-marriage possessions. The verdict was clinical but fair. The house sold, equity split 50-50, retirement accounts divided, savings accounts split, personal property apportioned with some concessions for sentimental items. The guitar my late father had given me and half of my college book collection were mine. She got the record collection, her choice of books, and other shared items. I felt a strange cocktail of relief and grief. Relief that justice, in some form, had been served. Grief for the 7 years I had invested in someone who had betrayed me, and for the loss of personal treasures that carried memories no money could replace. Logan left the courtroom with Olivia at his side, a smug nod in my direction. My stomach churned, but I held my head high. Caroline squeezed my shoulder. You did well. You kept control, documented everything, and didn't let emotions derail your strategy. That's victory in its own right. Driving home to my temporary apartment, a modest one-bedroom, far from the life we had built, every mile was a reminder of what had been lost and what I now had to rebuild. The apartment was small, but it was mine, safe, free from betrayal, if not from the emotional scars. The affair partner sent one last message that evening. No hard feelings, right? Sometimes people just grow apart. I blocked the number before finishing the sentence in my head. No hard feelings? You helped destroy my life. But yes, people grow apart, especially when trust is broken. Sitting on the couch, sipping a drink, I let the quiet settle. There was no grand revenge, no karmic justice, no satisfying ending in the traditional sense. Logan had cheated, flaunted it, and legally faced little consequence. But I had survived. I had maintained control over myself, my home, and my dignity. And that, I realized, was a victory of its own. The weeks after the trial were quiet in a way that was almost disorienting. My new apartment, small, modest, lacking the personal touches of our old home, felt simultaneously like a cage and a sanctuary. I had to rebuild not just my life, but the sense of trust, safety, and self-worth that Logan had fractured so thoroughly. I spent mornings unpacking boxes, sorting what was mine, what could be donated, and what I would never touch again. Each object held memories, some tender, some bitter. The guitar my father gave me, resting in a corner of the living room, reminded me of who I was before betrayal. The half of my book collection on the shelf symbolized resilience, continuity, and the power to preserve what truly mattered. Therapy became a ritual, a space to untangle the complex knots of anger, grief, and disbelief. Friends called regularly, checking in, offering support, but I learned quickly that the emotional labor of betrayal could not be outsourced. I had to sit with it, feel it, and eventually make peace with it. I drove past our old house one afternoon. Children played in the yard, neighbors waved, and the new family moved confidently through rooms that once belonged to my life and memories. A pang of loss stabbed me, but alongside it was clarity. The house was no longer my life. It was a symbol of what I had endured, survived, and learned from. I reflected on the justice system, the cold efficiency of no-fault laws, and the reality that betrayal often leaves the law indifferent. Logan had walked away with half of everything, Olivia by his side, seemingly untouched by consequence. And yet, I felt something he could never take: self-respect, clarity, and the knowledge that I had navigated the chaos with resolve, dignity, and precision. Rebuilding wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about legal victories or financial settlements. It was about regaining my center, my autonomy, and the quiet strength that had been dormant beneath the pain. I allowed myself small victories: a dinner out alone, a walk in the park without checking my phone for messages, a morning spent reading in sunlight rather than obsessing over what I had lost. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about Logan, about the apartment, about Olivia, and sometimes I let myself imagine a life where trust could exist again, slowly, carefully. Not with them, never with them, but with the possibility of someone who could value the love and honesty I offered. The final lesson was simple, bitter, and strangely freeing. Closure is not handed to you. It is earned through survival, reflection, and courage. You don't get perfect justice. You don't get perfect endings. You get yourself, scars, lessons, and the knowledge that life continues, even after devastation. I poured a cup of tea, sat by the window, and watched the city breathe in golden light. And for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of peace. The betrayal was behind me. The fight was over. The future, uncertain and fragile, was mine to shape. Sometimes people grow apart. Sometimes they win. But sometimes, survival is the greatest victory of all.